The topic that we'd be discussing today is the impact of changing life expectancy upon family. The impact of changing life expectancy upon family. Before we begin, we need to understand what the term life expectancy over here means. As we use the term life expectancy refers to the average period that a person may expect to live. Now, when we speak about the term life expectancy, like I said, the average period that a person may expect to live, or the average number of years a person is expected to live based on the current mortality rate. Now, as we speak about life expectancy over here, uh, in the recent past, we've seen that there's been a rise in the life expectancy rate, more so for the developed parts of the world as compared to the less developed countries. And if we speak about this life expectancy, over the last century, we've seen that life expectancy has increased significantly due to improvements in, maybe let's just say, healthcare, in living standards, in nutrition, in sanitation, in living conditions, so on and so forth. But the question that rises over here is, how has this increase in life expectancy affected the family structure? Not only the family structure, but at the same time, I believe they have affected the roles within families as well. So today we'd try to explore how longer life expectancy has changed family relationships, familial relationships, the responsibilities within the families, as well as family dynamics. So to begin with, now that I'd like to assume we all know what life expectancy is, we need to understand a couple of things. We need to understand that the life expectancy changes from country to country, region to region. Life expectancy differs between males and females both. So if we speak about the life expectancy, the current life expectancy based on the current life expectancy based on mortality rates in the United Kingdom, in the UK, it is around 79 years for males and it is around 83 years for females. So I recall teaching this, let's just say, I recall teaching this at least a decade ago, where we used to teach kids how the life expectancy of a male in UK was 77 years and how the life expectancy of females in the UK was 82 years. We see that over time, because of advancements in the healthcare facilities, because of better sanitation, because of better nutrition, because of better living standards, the life expectancy is increasing. Now, on one end, we spoke about life expectancy of males and females in the United Kingdom. If we speak about Japan, in Japan, we see that the life expectancy is even more. For instance, if we talk about the male life expectancy, the life expectancy of a male in Japan, this goes to around 81 years, and for females, this goes to around 87 years. And on the other hand, if we speak about countries like Pakistan, Africa, or for the matter of fact, India, in Pakistan, the current life expectancy for males is 65 years, and for females, it is 69 years. Now, just compare the life expectancy between, or the differences in terms of life expectancy between Pakistan and United Kingdom. I said for males in the UK, it is around 79 years, and for males in Pakistan, it is around 65 years. You see how there's a difference of at least 14 years. So there's a difference of around 14 years between the life expectancy of males living in Pakistan and the life expectancy of males living in the United Kingdom. Uh, and if we have a look at the more, if we talk about, rather say, if we talk about even lesser developed countries such as Africa, in Africa, the life expectancy of males is even less. This is around 60 years, and the life expectancy of females is around 64 years. So, if I talk about a comparison between Japan and Africa, in Japan, where a female lives for about 87 years, in Africa, a female lives for around 64 years, and 64 may 64 74 84. So there's a difference of 23 years. And this life expectancy, it varies, like I said, and it varies significantly across different countries, different regions. There might be various factors that we could bring in. Like I'd mentioned earlier, it might have to do with healthcare quality, it might have to do with your socioeconomic conditions, it might have to do with your lifestyle, so on and so forth. Now, having said that, we I'd like to assume know what life expectancy is. Life expectancy is the statistical measure of average life lived, which is different from males as compared to females, and it is different for each country. I just gave you an example. I just write down a few so that if required, you might as well note them down. For UK, we talk about males, and then we could talk about females. If we talk about UK for males, it is around 74 years, and for females, it is, I'm sorry, for in the UK, it is around 79 years for males, and for females, it is around 83 years. For for Japan, it is around 81 years, and for females, it is around 87 years. Then you could talk about Pakistan. It is around 65 years for males and around 69 years for females. And in Africa, it is around 60 years for males and 64 years for females. And we very clearly see how there are differences between how there are differences between different countries, and at the same time how there are differences between males and females. Now, if you've understood this, let's take this a little further and talk about the trend of life expectancy in more industrialization, or more in more developed parts of the world. This longer living pattern, or this trend of life expectancy, has led to individuals being affected in a different manner. So for more industrialized countries, for countries that are more industrialized, for countries that are more developed, I think the word developed makes more sense over here. There's a longer life expectancy that is expected, and in general, we see women generally living more than men. Now, the question that rises over here is, how is it that we think that this life expectancy has been affecting families? If we talk about life expectancy affecting families today, in today in the United Kingdom, we see how there are more of elderly people who are living, which, of course, the more elderly people you have, the more multi-generational families you'd have. And the more multi-generational families you have, the more beanpole families you have. The more beanpole families you have, the more it is going to affect your domestic familial arrangement. Now, if we talk about a difference in terms of this pattern, the graph that you see right at the top is representing Pakistan. This one is representing Pakistan, and the one beneath is representing the United Kingdom. So if we see, just have a look at this. This light blue is age range from 0 to 14 years. The darker shade of blue is 15 to 64 years, and this one in gray, that is almost invisible, shows people who have lived for 65 years or above. Now, for Pakistan, we very clearly see that Pakistan has more of Pakistan has around 38% of people who are between the age bracket of 0 to 14 years. And if you compare this with UK, this is only 17%, around 18%, right? And this pattern over here looks pretty similar. See, it's 17.64, 17.66, 17.67. So even if you talk about a 10-year comparison, we would see that there isn't much of a difference between the statistics from 2012 and 2022. However, for Pakistan, you see that there are more of individuals that are young in Pakistan. You see around 38% people, 38 to 39% people in 2012 who were between the age bracket 0 to 14 years. This has reduced a little in 2022, and this has led to an increase in people between the age bracket of 15 to 64. Now, if you have a closer look, do not miss on this. This is the part that we're interested in over here. We're talking about there being people who have lived longer, and how is it that the people who have lived longer have actually impacted family life, which consequently has led to differences in terms of the responsibilities that they once used to have, about the roles that were performed by men and women. So in the United Kingdom, we see that there is a huge chunk of the population who's 65 plus years, even when these statistics are from 2022. But if we see, if you have a population of more than 19% who's 65% or above, this is of course going to make a difference. This is of course going to impact your family relationships, along with other factors, along with other things as well. So having said that, if we take this further, how is it that this life increase in life expectancy has affected a family? Today there are more grandparents, and more grandparents having to there today grandparents, we see them playing their roles in familial dynamics, which has of course affected the socialization of children, and at the same time this has affected the behavior of the spouses as well. Now, taking this ahead, what could be the possible causes for changes in life expectancy? Like I'd mentioned earlier, better healthcare facilities. Number two, more cleanliness, especially in terms of drinking water or sanitization. Number three, there's more food that is provided via government and charities. Number four, there's more care about the livelihood and well-being of children. Number five, today there are more agencies such as CPS, that stands for Child Protection Service, which is becoming international and present in most countries, leading to children living longer and more fulfilling lives. So these could be the possible changes that have led to an increase, or these could be the possible causes that have led to an increase in life expectancy. Now, another aspect that we cannot and we should not miss on is there being an aging population. I just showed you the statistics and we saw how UK has an aging population, more of an aging population as compared to Pakistan. Just have a look at this again. In around in 19 in 2000 in 2022, we saw that more than 19% of individuals living in the UK was 65 years and above, which in other words means UK today has an aging population. So taking this ahead, aging population, this is caused by an increase in life expectancy and a decrease in childbirth, since medication, health, and health facilities have gotten better. So on one end, we see that there has been an increase in life expectancy, and on the other end, we see that there's been a decrease in childbirth, and this would eventually lead to an aging population where there are more people in your country who are old than young. Now, this isn't true for Pakistan, has never been, but in the more developed parts of the world, since the life expectancy it keeps on increasing, this is something that is very visible. Now, having a look at what Chambers has to say about this, according to Chambers in the year 2012, Chambers argues that the Western elderly cannot be categorized together as they have diversity. There's diversity in terms of gender, there's diversity in terms of sexuality, there's diversity in terms of ethnicity, in terms of religion, in terms of region, in terms of socioeconomic status, so on and so forth. The elderly should not be categorized as useless and a burden onto the family, as that view is a product of ageism. Now, what does the word ageism mean? When we use the word ageism, the idea over here is that you discriminate, when you're discriminating against individuals merely on the basis of the age bracket they belong to. The term is ageism. What does the word ageism over here mean? The word ageism over here refers to you, or the word ageism over here refers to an individual being discriminated against merely on the basis of the age bracket they belong to. And over here, since we're talking about an increase in life expectancy, we're talking about elderly people being discriminated against. So the elderly should not be categorized as useless. The elderly should not be categorized as useless and a burden upon families, as that view is a product of ageism. As many elderlies today earn and they remain independent until death. However, it must be noted that there are Western lenses that are employed by Chambers, and that this idea is not applicable globally. Now, when we or if we speak about Chambers over here, we're talking about, we could use the word ethnocentrism. When we use the word ethnocentrism, what does the word ethnocentrism over here mean? the word ethnocentrism over here refers to how the focus of, in this context, how the focus over here revolves around just one ethnicity, just one culture. So Chambers, of course, has a look at this through the Western lens. And if you have a look at this through the Western lens, you might agree to what Chambers has said. But then again, this does not stand to be true in the in other countries such as South Asian countries, Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. Now, taking this further, Chambers and that this idea is not applicable globally. In many countries, the elderly receive the highest amount of respect that can be given within a society. And this stands to be more true when you talk about less developed countries. If, like we had discussed right at the beginning, when we speak about when we speak about individuals from lesser developed countries, there is lesser life when we speak about individuals from lesser developed countries, we see that their life expectancy isn't really very high, whereas when we speak about individuals from the more developed parts of the world, we see that the life expectancy there is super high. However, it is important for us to understand that because of ageism, now what does the word ageism over here mean? When we use the word ageism, we're talking about how a particular individual or how a particular social group is discriminated against merely on the basis of the age bracket they belong to. Now, taking this ahead, the impact of life expectancy change. Now, as we speak about the impact of life expectancy change over here, an increase in there has been an increase in elderly lone person or a single person household. Many females tend to be living in single person households today, because as we saw that the average lifespan of females is more as compared to males. Because women live longer, the likelihood of them eventually having to live all by themselves alone is higher. Now, this is very clearly evident if you clearly have a look at this. Now, Pakistan being an exception where your culture doesn't really allow you to let go of elderly people. If you talk about countries like Japan, if you talk about countries like the United Kingdom, there is a high likelihood of elderly people having to live all by themselves. Elderly people, who typically are females in this case, and I explained you why females, because females tend to live longer as compared to males. Now, taking this ahead, today, we see an increase in the number of vertical extended families as well. Today, we see an increase in the number of vertical extended families. Now, I'd like to assume we all know the difference between a horizontal extended family and a vertical extended family. When we speak about a vertical extended family, we're talking about 3 generations, bare minimum, where it's your parents, and your parents and your grandparents. So you, the first generation, your parents, the second generation, and your grandparents, the third generation. However, in some cases, we have come across many multi-generational households as well, where there are more than 3 generations that are alive, and in some cases living together as well. So there's been an increase in vertical extended families in industrialized countries, which is more common in pre-industrialized societies already. Women today take care of the elderly more in households as compared to men. Now, because of the society, because of the cultural expectations, we see women to be held responsible for catering to the needs and the requirements of elderly people. This adds another layer of burden onto wives, as they may have to take care of the doctor's appointment, they might have to take care of food, medicine, etc., etc. And all of this, as you see now, is or has started affecting familial arrangements. So today, it wouldn't be wrong for us to say that many families, they experience a burden of elderly care, which has led to this idea of sandwich carers or a sandwich generation as well. Now, when we use the word sandwich carer or when we use the word sandwich generation, we're typically talking about middle-aged adults who are usually females, and the way they have to care for both their own children and their elderly parents as well. And not to forget, in some cases, this might lead to an increased financial burden. And not only financial burden, uh, uh, this might end up in an emotional strain on these females as well. Now, taking this ahead, according to Healy and Yarrow in the year 1997, they point out that the most elderly people move in with their daughters, and the daughters become sandwich carers. Daughters must take care of both the generations, both their own children, both their grandparents and the grandchildren, or I'm sorry, both their own parents and their own children. We'd have to remove this word grand from here. So women are more likely to leave women are more likely to leave their job to take care of elderly people at home. We see this happening so much in our part of the world. She is at risk of issues such as anxiety. Remember, I'd used the word emotional strain, as the emotion burden of the house falls on her now. This has consequently lead to an increase in beanpole families as well. This idea of a beanpole family was initiated by Brannan in the year 2003. Now, when we speak about a beanpole family, remember when I had said, if you want to understand what a beanpole family is, there are two characteristics that you keep in mind. Number one, today with the passage of time, there's been an increase in life expectancy. One aspect. The second aspect, not only has there been an increase in life expectancy, but at the same time, people are giving birth to fewer children. So when there's an increase in life expectancy, that means there would be more of generations, and over here we're talking about great grandparents, grandparents, parents, children, etc. And at the same time, there are fewer horizontal connections. You would have fewer aunts, uncles, cousins due to a smaller family size. So on one end, there's been an increase in life expectancy. On the other end, there's been a decrease in the amount of children that are being born to people today. Now, taking this ahead, how is it for a grandparent to be a grandparent? How does a grandparent feel? In most cases, this might seem to be a very rewarding experience, as grandparents get to spend time with their families and grandchildren get to learn new things out of them. If we speak about the social position of grandparents. We're talking about the social position of grandparents. Now, when we speak about the social position of grandparents, today, in many cases, there's a huge contribution that these grandparents play, or that these grandparents have in terms of parenting and socializing of the grandchildren. A huge contribution in terms of parenting, at the same time socialization of the grandchildren, as living longer means they have more time to help raise their kin or the grandchildren. One. Number two, these grandparents, they take care of grandchildren and remove the need for childcare facilities. Removing the need for childcare facilities. Childcare facilities are expensive. They might cause a financial strain on your family's resources. So if you have elderly people at home, they could be the safest of option. They could help the family by not having to pay for childcare facilities. So imagine if the husband and the wife, they're both working, they'd have to send the child, or they'd have to arrange for childcare facilities for the children. So in the cases where there are grandparents, the need for childcare facilities or having to pay for childcare facilities gets removed, and the childcare costs by parents are reduced, causing financial ease to them. The next point, grandparents, they seem to offer unconditional love, advice, and emotional support to children, especially when it comes to teens who, in their rebellious phase, feel misunderstood by parents and argue with them often. So another that could be another point. At times, we've seen how grandparents act as mediators between parents and children, and in some cultures we've seen some grandparents, they hold a central authority role. They shape family traditions, they shape family values, and this is more evident in our part of the world, in the South Asian culture. The fourth point, under the heading of the social position of grandparents, Especially in homes with both the parents working or in a single parent household, the grandparents did most of the childcare at home, often becoming the main providers for childcare. So, this is again a plus point. This is again how there's been a difference, or how an increase in life expectancy has positively affected familial arrangements. Now, if we talk about cross-cultural comparison, in terms of the role performed by grandparents, now the question that rises over here is the few points that we've discussed since the last few minutes. We've seen how the grandparents have been seen to be playing a very positive role. The question that rises over here is, do we get to witness this everywhere? Maybe not, because if you talk about countries where there are traditional and extended families, we could speak about Asian countries, we could speak about African countries, we could also speak about Latin American countries. We see the grandparents often live with their children and the grandchildren, which while at the same time we see them playing a very active role in the family as well. In some cases, in some Asian cultures, in some Confucian cultures like the Chinese, the Japanese, the Koreans, we see how the grandparents, they're seen as a source of wisdom. Not only are they seen as a source of wisdom, they're also seen as an authoritative figure within the family. There are many countries where, because of cultural reasons, or more so because of religious guidance, grandparents in, let's just say, in the Muslim Islam as a religion, it preaches how one should be nice towards your parents and grandparents as well. So it could be because of cultural reasons, it could be because of religious guidance. Countries like Pakistan, countries like India, or for the matter of fact, if we speak about Buddhist societies as well. So then, even in Buddhist societies, you see how the cultural traditions, they are transmitted from one generation to the next by the grandparents. Over here, so we were talking about cross-cultural comparison. On one end, we spoke about the role that grandparents play in countries where there are traditional extended families. I spoke about Asian countries, I spoke about South Asian countries, I spoke about African countries. Now, if we take this ahead, and for the sake of comparison, if we speak about the role that grandparents play in the more developed parts of the world, it wouldn't be wrong to refer to these societies as self-oriented, individualistic societies where there are more of nuclear families that are found. We could refer to the United Kingdom, we could refer to Western Europe, we could refer to the United States of America, and we could also refer to Australian countries. In these countries, we see that grandparents, they end up living their lives in a more independent manner. So there's more of independent living when it comes to there's more of independent living when it comes to the more developed parts of the world. Taking this ahead, grandparents are less likely to live with their children due to individualistic values. Or another factor that we also cannot miss on at this point is state pension too. The state, because their welfare states in many countries out in the West and more developed parts of the world, we see how the welfare state has quite a role, has quite a contribution towards towards elderly people within a society. Now, let's have a look at cross-cultural comparison. Let's have a look at this heading and see what we have in front of us. In some societies that mainly consist of people of color, such as Asian societies or Black people, the elderly are given more of respect, which is also referred to as filial filial piety or filial piety. When we use the word filial piety, this is a Chinese concept that means children are expected to care for their elderly parents, which of course reinforces grandparents playing an active role within the society. Now, taking this ahead, which means people show more attentiveness and care for older people solely due to their age. Now, taking this ahead, if we move on, and we speak about retirement homes. Retirement homes are a primary Western concept. the retirement homes or old age homes that we talk about, primarily they're a Western concept, which even to this date and age, you do not come across many old age homes or retirement homes in the lesser developed parts of the world, in in Pakistan, or even when India today is economically and financially economically doing really well, and they're a stable country. Despite of that, if you talk about a comparison of India with the Western world, you'd see that there are still relatively less old age homes that are present or that you come across in India. So retirement homes are a primarily Western concept, and they don't exist in other societies in the same way. It would be seen as incredibly unfilial and disrespectful to not take care of the elderly in their old age after they've been raised by them. In South Asia, for example, the elderly are not just respected and shown care, they're the head of many households as well. And they have the final say or verdict in most decisions in the home, including financial decisions, getting the grandchildren married, etc., etc. Taking this ahead, if we talk about Burton in the year 1980 found that most African American grandmothers, so we spoke about how old age homes were a Western concept. We hopped on to South Asian countries. Now we're talking about African Americans. So, according to Burton in the year 1980, Burton found that most African American grandmothers who were in their early to mid 30s. Now, this might make some of you wonder, how is it that a grandparent is in her early to mid 30? Of course, this could be because of teenage pregnancies, and this is seen to be more common in African Americans. So, because of teenage pregnancies, you see that there are many grandparents who are in their early to mid 30s, and they often felt out of the league and unsure with how to handle with this new title. So you're a grandparent already and you feel that you're still young, is what we're talking about. Most grandparents, regardless of culture, enjoyed being a new grandparent, and these grandparents that we're talking about, they were seen to be between the age range of 50 to 60 years. However, after 75 years of age, they felt a little too distressed and sad because they felt like they weren't really able to spend their time with the grandchildren because of the way they wanted to, and this could perhaps be uh, this could perhaps be because of their age, because today they do not really see themselves or feel that they're fit enough. Taking this ahead, grandparents, especially in Asia, Africa, and other non-Western spaces, they often discipline their children, especially grandmothers. In compared to grandmothers, they seem to be stricter. This discipline may be even stricter than their own parents. So I believe this is quite, uh, I believe this is I wouldn't say more than enough. So this is quite enough for you all to be able to write answers. Now, taking this ahead, if we talk about Bangladeshi grandparents and Bangladeshi grandchildren. So this study that was conducted by Jessel et al. In the year 2001. Jessel et al. Researched that many Bangladeshi children in the UK had mutualistic relationships. Focus on this word, mutualistic relationships. What sort of mutualistic relationships are we talking about here? So Jessel et al. In the year 2011 researched that many Bangladeshi children in the UK had mutualistic relationships with their grandparents, as their grandparents would teach them about their cultural heritage and language, while they teach the grandparents about modern devices such as using computers. Having said that, if we take this ahead, another reference that we could use over here by Oyezerman et al. Now, if we speak about, I'd want you all to take a moment and try learning this spelling. So, Oyeserman. Oyezerman et al. In 1993 explored the role of grandparents in family structures, particularly focusing on how they contribute the to the socialization of the grandchildren and towards child development as well. So, according to Oyezerman et al. In 1993, they found that boys that were raised by grandparents with the help of grandparents showed more typically non masculine traits and less toxic masculinity as well. Taking this ahead, if we speak about this, families headed by grandparents often experience more poverty. The grandparents do not have the know how needed to get well paying jobs in modern societies and cannot work as hard as they once could due to aging and its effects. So, this I believe must have helped you. If you want to, if you want to sprinkle bit of perspectives here, we could talk about the functionalist perspective. Let's have a look at what the functionalists have to say about this. According to the functionalist perspective, remember, adding sociological references or bringing in sociological perspectives would always help you score better. You could write down about how functionalists believe that the grandparents, remember, if you're talking about a functionalist, you're looking for, or you're looking at rather, how grandparents could play a beneficial role for the grandchildren, for the family, as well as the society as a whole. So, grandparents, we could say, grandparents provide with stability and continuity within the family. Reinforcing family bonds. If you have a look at the Marxist perspective here, you could say grandparents offer unpaid labor, supporting capitalism by allowing, by just sprinkling perspectives in your answer. This could make so much of difference. By allowing parents to work while they look after the grandchildren. Okay, since we've written down about the functionist perspective and the Marxist perspective, how could we forget the feminist perspective? Grandmothers in particular take on a disproportionate caregiving role, highlighting gender inequalities in family relationships, or family responsibilities would be better. So I hope this has been helpful, and this finally brings this topic, that was the influence of an or the impact of changing life expectancy upon the family. And yeah, so the impact of changing life expectancy upon the family. This topic over here comes to an end. I hope this has helped.